WTIC Television brings you the 100th rowing of the Yale-Harvard Regatta, as originally telecast from New London on Saturday, June 19, 1965. Now ready with the boatings and the start of today's race is Bill Hennessy.
It's very close to starting time now here at Bartlett's Cove, and both boats are pulling up to the stake boats. We'll give you the boatings now to find out first who's in the Yale crew. At the bow is Bill Taylor. In number 2 position, Henry Hillenmeyer. Number 3, John Pinney. In 4th, Bill Hazard. 5th, Chris Albert, followed by Harry Osborne in 6th, Dave Hathaway at 7. The stroke is Dick Frandine for Yale, and the coxswain is Dick Jackson. In the Harvard boat now, at the bow is Jeff Gratwick. Bob Schwartz takes number 2. Tom Pollock is in 3. Jim 2 and Brian Clemo 4 and 5 respectively. And you notice they're on the same side of the boat. They're both on the starboard oars. Paul Gunderson, the captain, is in number 6. Bob Whitney in 7. The stroke is Jeff Picard, and the coxswain is John Unkovic. That's the Harvard lineup. Only 2 juniors in the whole Harvard boat, and they are Clemo and 2, the 2 boys you see who have the unusual seating position. This arrangement to give more balance to the Harvard crew, following pretty much the Ratzeburg system taken from overseas. The race is about to get underway. The Yale coxswain, Dick Jackson, has his hand still in the air, meaning his boat is not yet prepared, but the Harvard boat looks ready to take off. Now both hands are down. There goes the Harvard cox, John Unkovic, raising his hand. So we're still not quite prepared to go. Now, both hands are down. It could happen any second. There they go. They're off now for the 100th rowing of the Yale-Harvard Regatta, and already Harvard seems to be a little bit in front of the Yale boat. As they pass directly in front of us, Harvard is out already by a deck length, and they're coming up to about 100 yards as they go past one of our camera positions directly in front of our vantage point here at Bartlett's Cove. And now for more of the stroke-by-stroke description, with Harvard a little bit in front, here again is George Ehrlich.
Okay, Bill, this big one is underway. Will Harvard continue to prove, or at least push forth, the idea that they may be potentially one of the greatest crews in the history of racing? This is one of the 2 remaining tests for this Harvard crew, the big 4-mile pull against the Elis of Yale. After this one comes the Henley, but this is the one the Canterburyans are after. This is the 4-mile pull, and Harvard on the left, Yale on the right, and Harvard jumped off to that quick early lead. And it's a 37 stroking for the Elis off the mark, and a 38 stroking for the Crimson. So you can see these crews are at it right off the gun. In fact, we were very fortunate in talking to the 2 coaches as to what the pre-race plan would be. And as far as Coach Harry Parker coaching that crew to the left of your picture right now, the undefeated Crimson, Coach Harry Parker said he wants his crew to get off real strong, maintain the 31 or 32 that they settle on for most of the season and have been settling on it so successfully, and then to make a move between 1 and 2 miles. So let's see if the pre-race plan of Harvard is borne out. As far as the Elis, Coach Jim Rathschmidt, with the rain continuing to pelt down here on the course, Coach Jim Rathschmidt's idea was that he would like his crew to stay as close as they could to the Crimson through the first 2 miles of the race, then look for the good opening and make a move if possible. Johnny Unkovic, the coxswain of Harvard, the Harvard shell on your left. On the right, the Eli shell as they approach the first half mile of the big race, and 2 minutes has gone by in the race. Going through the half-mile marker, Harvard maintaining a slight lead over the Elis. Harvard on the right of your screen, the Eli shell to the left. Both crews rowing in a Pocock shell, the normal Stampley that the Crimson has used so successfully this season is on its way to the Henley Regatta. However, let me remind you that the Crimson are not unfamiliar with the Pocock shell. They have the unusual German rigging with the number 4 and 5 men rowing on the starboard side. They have that incorporated into the Pocock shell, but they won on the Severn against Navy in that very same Pocock shell, so they're not in bad shape. They're not unhappy about the fact that they don't have the Stampley. Incidentally, to give you a quick comment on it, in the Harvard shell, the Crimson rowing in a shell, the Edward C. Storrow shell, while the Elis are rowing in the James S. Rockefeller shell. There is the Crimson Crew, potentially one of the greatest crews in rowing history. And a man who knows quite a bit about this Crimson Crew is sitting right to my left. And right now, Larry Coolidge, they look pretty good to me. How do they look to you?
Thank you, George. They look really fine to me. It was a little unexpected that they were so high getting off the mark. They hoped to get off at around a 34. My first clocking was around a 40. They're really anxious in this race. It's still pretty close. They had expected to be a little farther out at this time, talking to the boys, and they actually are now.
And of course, they'd like to win this race in the opening portion if they can, although this was not the strategy that Coach Harry Parker had set as far as the pre-race plan is concerned. The Harvard shell, and nearest to the camera, just coming into view, the Eli shell. Up front there in the bow, you see Bill Taylor, and Captain Henry Hillenmeyer is in the number 2 seat with John Penny in the number 3 seat. There are the Elis. You see Captain Henry Hillenmeyer, who has given up in the number 2 seat, second from the right. He has given up 6 shirts to the Crimson, and he'd like to come along and get one of those Harvard shirts. Someone said the only way he can is to buy one. Well, right now the Eli crew is seeing if they can determine something that they haven't been able to do in quite some time. Incidentally, Harvard going for the sweep and going through now the 1 mile markers. There's the Crimson Crew with the coxswain Johnny Unkovic. You see John in the stern of the boat moving toward the bow now. You see Jeff Gratwick. Gratwick is rowing on the port side, which is unusual for a bow. Usually the bow is on the starboard side, but as you move further back in the boat, you see Brian Clemmo and you see Jim Two in seats number 4 and 5, both rowing on the starboard side. This is the so-called unusual Ratzeburg rigging, the German rigging, and that supposedly is in there for only one reason, to keep that boat rowing a little smoother. The rain is coming down on the Thames River, but I imagine it's not bothering these boys right now, as the Harvard, or rather the Eli coxswain Dick Jackson, a senior, 5'8", 124 pounds from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, hitting the bang plates on the side of the Eli shell and trying to get that young man sitting in front of him, Dick Brandine, to lead this Eli crew to a victory this afternoon, which would be one of the great upsets in collegiate rowing. Not too many have given this Eli crew much of a chance. However, the reason is that crew you're looking at right now, the Crimson Crew, undefeated. They have set records up and down the eastern seaboard. In seat number 5 on the starboard side, you see rowing Brian Clemmo, a junior from West Hartford, Connecticut, and he's the only new man in the boat. The only boy who did not row against the Elis last year, with, of course, the exception also of the coxswain, Johnny Unkovic, who takes the place of Ted Washburn, who moved on as the freshman coach and saw a freshman Harvard crew that he coached, his first crew, winning a race this afternoon on the Thames. Harvard has maintained somewhat of a lead over the Elis. We'll be coming to the 1.5 mile marker, and the time in the race so far is 7 minutes, just about now. As far as the records are concerned, well, the downstream record,
Harvard is rowing 30. Harvard coming up to the 1.5 mile flag now. Bow on the flag now. Yale just caught a partial crab. Yale bow on the flag now. There is now 10 seconds between the crews. Harvard is 2.5 lengths ahead.
Well, already you see this Eli crew has its work cut out for it. The Eli crew trailing by 10 seconds, and as the crew folks figure it out, 4 seconds to a length, that puts the Harvard crew about 2 1/4 lengths ahead of the Elis. So, unfortunately, the Elis are not, as of the moment, able to stay with this tremendous Harvard crew. The Harvard crew that has Jeff Picard at stroke, a veteran senior from Lafayette, California, and he is a great rower. Off to the right of your screen, you see, and now a close-up of them, the leading Harvard crew, leading by a little more than 2 lengths, and going for a sweep. The last sweep of 4 races, which includes the combination 1963. However, right now, the Crimson picture is looking extremely bright. Although the Eli crew is far from giving up, this is a 4-mile race, and let's not forget that just about 3 years ago, it was a young Harvard crew that was not expected to do much in the race, and Harvard came on to defeat the Elis, and Yale knows this. And there they are, the Elis. You can see the expressions on their faces as they dig in those blades. There is a slight difference in the style of rowing for these 2 crews. The Elis, on their recovery, start fast and then slow down a bit and then dig in for the catch. Harvard, just the opposite. However, it's probably not too noticeable, only to the sharpest rowing enthusiast. In fact, these 2 crews do it so beautifully, you hardly can tell the difference.
Harvard, bow on the 2-mile mark. Now. Yale is approaching the 2-mile mark. Yale, bow on the 2-mile mark. Now, there is more than 15 seconds between the crew, almost a 4-length difference, 3 3/4. 2 miles down and 2 more.
Well, the Elis continue to fall behind in this race as the Crimson is keeping up the pressure. The Crimson leading now by about 3 3/4 to 4 lengths, about a 15-second difference. As far as our revolving clock here, as far as the overall timing, it's 10.5 minutes into the race. 19:21.4 is the record time on the Thames River. It was set on the downstream race in 1948. So that is a possible record that Harvard could be shooting at. And right now, of course, they're more concerned with the Eli crew because records come when you win a race big. And right now, Harvard is winning big and looking for the sweep here on the Thames River. In the upper portion of your screen, the leading Harvard shell, trailing by approximately 4 lengths now, the Elis of Coach Jim Rathschmidt, trying to do a job. There again, the close-up of the Eli shell. Dick Frandine right in front of the coxswain, Dick Jackson. And there is the coxswain, Dick Jackson, pounding on the bank plates, trying to get more mileage out of this shell, get it moving faster. They've got work to do. Work to do on the Thames River. As you can see, the Crimson on the left, maintaining a 4-mile lead. They are heading toward the 2.5-mile marker. The rain continues to come down on the Thames River. And as far as the strokings, how about this? That Crimson crew with this tremendous lead, 29.5. So they are moving that boat very well and very much understroking. Coming up to the 2.5-mile marker now.
All right, Harvard is coming up on the flag. Flag on the flag.
Plastic down, duck a little more, Mac.
Frank, I want you to back up.
Mac, back up and sit against the seat. Okay.
Yale is coming up to the flag now. Bow on the flag now. 24.5 seconds between the crews. 6.5 lengths. Over 6.
24.5 seconds difference as they went through the 2.5-mile marker, and that gives the Crimson in the upper portion of your screen a lead of approximately 6 lengths. So the Crimson is pouring it on, as they were expected to do if they could. And this young Eli crew with a sophomore stroke, Dick Frandine, trying its utmost to put some pressure and cut down in this lead, but it's an awful tough task. Greg Gates, is this too much of a lead for Yale right now? Only a possible trouble in that Harvard shell.
I would say so, George. Yale's made every effort to keep themselves in this race, and in spite of their best efforts, it seems that Harvard is too strong.
And you can continue to see the tremendous rowing power of this Harvard crew, stroking at approximately 30 and getting such tremendous power out of that boat. The coxswain of Yale, Dick Jackson, the voice and eyes of the Shell, urging on his teammates, and the tremendous strain you see on the face. This is a tough pull. This is one of the greatest amateur sports of them all. There's very little individual glory for these young men. You see the Harvard Shell now with the observation train in the rear, and we move back to see the tremendous distance between Harvard and the Eli Shell. Incidentally, the widest margin of victory in this race was back in 1935, 45 seconds, and that could be a threatening thing as the Crimson continues to put tremendous pressure on the Elis. In the center and lower portion of your screen, the Eli crew.
Harvard approaching the 1 mile slow flag. Now, with the flag. Be applauded. Now approaching the 1 mile to go flag. Bow on now. I have 36.5 seconds between the crews.
26.5 seconds, the difference between these two crews right now, and that's 6 length and a little bit more. 14:45 was the approximate 3-mile time for the Crimson as they head for the 1921-4 record if they can get it. And that will be possibly the excitement of this race. A crew that has broken 2 records this year on the Charles River by 10 seconds, on Lake Carnegie by 20 seconds. Can they break the record on the Thames as the Eli crew, a game outfit, but right now not able to match the tremendous power, experience, smoothness of this Crimson Shell. Johnny Unkovic, the stroke Jeff Picard, the captain Paul Gunderson, doing the big job as expected here on the Thames River.
George, I don't think they're going to get that record in that they rode 15 seconds ahead of 20 minutes for the first half mile, and they've slowed down considerably as Yale really isn't pushing them as hard as perhaps they'd like to see it. So I don't think you're going to see a record here today.
Well, that could very well be true, Larry Coolidge, because you need that competition usually to do a job in the time. And right now, that Crimson crew doesn't look to me to be in any kind of trouble whatsoever, although it's still a race. It's always a race until one shell crosses the finish line. Let's not forget that things can happen and have happened in a Yale-Harvard boat race. And right now, it looks like the only hope that the Elis have is that something happens to upset that Crimson Shell, and that's rather unlikely. Coming up now to 3.5 miles, and we are 17 minutes into the race. On the right of your screen, a Crimson crew that looks to be a victorious crew, leading by 30.5 seconds over 7 lengths and getting very close to 8 lengths ahead. Incidentally, 8 lengths was approximate the margin of victory last year, so Harvard is improving. And you hear in the background the spectator fleet. The observation train is pulling in on the railroad bridge, and the Harvard crew is heading toward the Gold Star Bridge at the end of the 4-mile pull that will bring to them a sweep and a continued undefeated season. Looking at our timing now, as we see that Harvard crew is possibly pushing for a record, but they'll have to pick up that pace if they go for a record. The timing in 4 seconds, 3, 2, 1, 19 minutes right now. The record 19:21. Can they beat 21 seconds from about 100 yards out? I don't know. They are stroking now at 30. Here comes that Harvard crew stroking at 30 and hoping for a record, but I don't believe they will get it. They cannot get it. It's 19:15 right now. And we are about right at this moment. We have surpassed the record time, but it's going to be a winning crew. Here comes Harvard toward the finish line, and the spectator fleet giving them a reception. An undefeated and potentially one of the greatest crews in history. You are watching them approach the finish line. Here they come, about 2 or 3 strokes. There's 1, there's 2. The flag is down. Harvard wins the Yale Harvard Regatta, the 100th renewal. And a tremendous margin. Once again, a disappointment for Coach Jim Rathschmidt, whose Eli's have not given up as far as getting this shell across the finish line. Here come the Eli's, outclassed this afternoon, but a game crew digging in right to the very end. And lots of time elapsing between the two crews. Here come the Eli's to the finish line. Coming through. Now, Yale has finished, and Harvard wins the 100th renewal of intercollegiate sports' very first athletic event. We'll have the official timing from the judges' boat in just a moment. Well, aboard the judges' boat at the finish line is Bob Nelson. So let's go there right now for the official timing of the varsity race in the 100th Harvard-Yale Rowing Regatta.
(19:41 3/5) is the official time, as it has just been given to us by the official timer. The official's boat has just pulled alongside the judge's boat. Ironically, it was a Yale judge, Bob Peru, former crewman himself, who released the yellow flag, ending this race. Well, Coach Harry Parker, it's a great day for Harvard today. You didn't quite make that record, but it's a clean sweep for Harvard, and you did, I would say, pretty well. How do you feel?
I was quite pleased with the way things turned out.
I understand it was a little wet up there, and it's still sprinkling down here now. Do you think this made any difference to you?
No, I wouldn't say at all. In fact, it's really quite comfortable rowing the rain.
How about the boys? How did they behave?
Oh, I thought very well. They rowed very well within themselves and just drove it out hard all the way, which is, I think, what they had intended to do.
Well, this is a fantastic crew. We've heard lots about them, and we're going to hear more about them. Do you think they lived up to their expectations in this, the big race for you?
Oh, I feel, yes. How could you have asked for any more? They came down the course pretty fast with very little in the way of help by either current or wind, and in very good time.
Where do you go from here? What's the next step?
Well, on Monday we'll be leaving for England and getting ready for the Henley Regatta.
Well, you did a wonderful job. They all did a fine job. Harry, thank you so much, and again, congratulations.
Thank you.
And we gratefully acknowledge also the cooperation of the Southeastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce, Co-Chairman Hoyt Pease and Bob Chappell of their Regatta Committee, Mr. Jack Hirschfield, Harvard and Yale Universities, the United States Coast Guard, the Academy and Auxiliary, the United States Submarine Base, the Connecticut Board of Fisheries and Game, and the Highway Department, the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad, the Central Vermont Railway, and the New London Day. Now here again, George Early.
Thanks, Bill Hennessy, and with Harvard the winner of the 100th Harvard-Yale Rowing Regatta, this is George Ehrlich saying good night from New London.